Welcome. This is the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscoe, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, Forbes contributor, and general explorer of the service and experience space. On the podcast, I seek out and interview entrepreneurs, leading business people, authors, tech leaders, academics, and generally cool people doing interesting stuff in the service and experience space. Check out the archive at adrianswinscoe.com. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. Before we get into the interview, I want to say a big thank you to the folks at Qualtrics. They are sponsoring this episode of the Punk CX podcast ahead of the annual gathering of experienced leaders at Qualtrics X4 in London, which is taking place on June the 6th. There you will hear about some of the best customer experience programs from industry leaders and companies including Belron, Allianz, and Adidas. To find out more and register, then head over to the Qualtrics website. Welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. I am in Las Vegas at the Adobe Summit. I've never been to the Adobe Summit before. It's crazy, full on. My head's bursting with all these kind of new things I've seen. Some of them have been amazing. But I've also just watched and listened to, been inspired by Emma Springham, who's the CMO of TSB, who's just left being on the main stage. So Emma, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you. Nice to see you. Congratulations on a great presentation, but also the Maverick Award. Now, I had a Punk CX podcast, and when you put Punk and Maverick together, it feels like, wow, a great marriage. So congratulations on that. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about you, how long you've been at TSB and the CMO role, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so Emma Springham, Chief Marketing Officer. I was born and bred into financial services. I actually started working at the Woolwich. I don't know if you remember that brand.
Yeah, I love the Woolwich.
It was in my hometown, so I started working there at 16. And I've just always, after that, Barclays took over the Woolwich, so I ended up on the Barclays graduate scheme. And I've just always worked in current accounts, mortgages, loans. I feel like I was born and bred into it, to be honest.
Blimey.
But I've worked for quite a few brands like NatWest and Allianz and most recently TSB. I've been there about 3 years.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, I was reading up on, I know there was a great new article that came out on the Adobe blog about the partnership that Adobe has, or TSB has with Adobe. It was written, it just came out a couple of days ago, and it was describing a bit of the background of the TSB bank. And I didn't know as a Scot, but this thing warmed my heart, that the TSB started in Dumfriesshire. I was like, blimey, we've started a lot of banks. We're quite notorious in this, which was a great thing. So it started in Dumfriesshire in 1810. And you talked about that on the stage, but one of the things that stood out for me on the stage, because it felt like a presentation that wasn't really like anybody else's presentation. It wasn't a case study, because you actually started, you talked about what is your personal brand, and I was like, what now? Can you tell me describe to me what you mean by the personal brand, and also the words that you use to describe your personal brand and why that's important?
Yeah, I just find it surprising that people don't spend more time thinking about their personal brand. I just think that it's really important to spend that time thinking about what it is you represent, because then your behaviours and your values, and if you start thinking about some of those core things, my 3 words are brave, trust and growth. And I kind of have those sort of sets, and then there's certain examples that sit below those.
Yeah, no, I think I guess it made me think when you were talking about it. It made me think about, you then sort of helps you decide what you stand for and what you're willing to do, and also what you're not willing to do, and how you go about doing things. But you also said an interesting thing about bravery, because I think that's an interesting thing. There's been themes. I think Guy Raz was talking about failure and things, and bravery implies trying things that might not work. And I think that was kind of really important. But you also said that kind of bravery is in your family kind of DNA. And sometimes you're like, and I wondered if you could explain that, because you said, well, sometimes I don't feel very brave when it's, if I compare it to other members of my family. So, and it was Alex. No, Bex.
Yeah.
Bex.
So no, look, but Bex is, we've been together like over 20 years. And,
right.
But coming home to someone that saves lives every day. So they're a sort of senior sister at London Bridge Hospital. So it just makes you question, actually, when I look at what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it was really, you get these different moments as well. So COVID was the other one, when I was watching Bex go off to work and I'm sort of sitting there at home, working from home in a safe environment. It was moments like that where you sort of really appreciate what they're doing for a job. But it then comes back to me to say, what am I doing? Like, you know, what am I doing to make a difference? And have I got great values in some of my leadership as well? Because I think leaders really affect people.
Oh, completely set the tone. And is it a practice that you've encouraged the rest of your team to do? And how does that work in terms of, do you get like divergent sort of like words and values and things and you have to address that? And is that I guess that makes it challenging, because I think does it make it challenging? I guess.
So with my team, you know, I've asked them what they think my 3 words are. In the coaching sessions, I get them to think about their 3 words.
Right.
So we do have like a very open, I'm a coaching leader.
Okay.
That's my type of style.
Okay.
So we have these sort of open conversations really. So whenever we've got a coaching session, I'll be like, what's your 3 words? What do you think your partner thinks your 3 words are?
Right.
But it's also off the top of your head, because if you actually think about it at speed, it makes you come up with the 3 words. But it just starts to make you then explore, are they the right words? Do I want it to be something different? Or what does that actually mean in terms of the work I'm actually doing? So it just makes you go a bit deeper and just think about what you're actually doing. But the thing for me is that I don't want to get to the end of my career and people think I was a bad leader and I affected their life in some way that was negative. So that's what I want to look back at and think, actually, I helped people, or I helped someone get promoted, or I might have supported them in a difficult situation. That's what I care about.
Yeah. And I think because the other thing, you talked about bravery, and when we talk about sort of financial services, there's a like background, particularly in the last 18 months, the last 9 months really, since the introduction of the FCA's consumer duty and looking after people that have vulnerabilities. And I think research has shown that, even the FCA's research has shown, like on their scales, nearly 70% of the whole UK population could at some point or another be classified as being kind of vulnerable. And I think but we don't necessarily talk about some of this sort of stuff, because I think there's other research that shows that, despite all of that, only a small percentage of those people actually would self-identify as being vulnerable. So actually bringing out those difficult conversations to life, I think, is really important. So I was really pleased when you used this, the campaign that you shared about was the pink elephant. You talked about the elephant in the room, because about people don't talk about money. So tell me about that, and also it's been award-winning too as well. Right?
No, I'm really proud of the Tiny the Elephant. So the elephant in the room, but it's really the concept around it, exactly as you say. I want people to talk about their money worries, and 1 in 5 people talk about their money worries, and there's a lot of pressure. And actually, when you start to get into the research, for men in particular, it's really difficult. It's one thing talking about mental health, but when you talk about finance, it's another level, because there's often this sort of expectation of responsibility and failure that's sort of associated to it. So for me, I don't know, I just got really proud of the elephant in the room. But what I said to my creative agency was, be brave. I told them to be brave.
Okay.
And we threw out so many different ideas along the way. And then when the pink elephant came up, you just know, you get this feeling. Well, you get that feeling, don't you, sometimes and I just absolutely loved it. Most people in the room were like, there's no way the board are going to buy into a pink elephant. Even the creative director said, are you really going to pitch a pink elephant? And I said, the elephant in the room it's just absolutely perfect for a bank.
And did the boards really go for it, or did they need some sort of persuasion?
I'm really lucky, actually. We've got fantastic board members that have got marketing backgrounds.
Okay.
So we've got people like Libby Chambers, that was ex-Barclaycard.
Right.
And she just got it straight away. She just got it because of her background.
Sure.
And actually, she was a really key voice for me, if that makes sense, to sort of convince the others of this is the right thing. So her voice in that room advocated, but I did go to her before the meeting just to warm her up and share some of the ideas. I wasn't blindsiding her in the board meeting. But no, people were really, I think there was probably a couple of people that were, not too sure maybe, but the award just smashed that out the water, really.
That was marketing week, was it?
Yeah, so marketing week, you don't put yourself forward for that award. That's what meant more to them.
Right.
It wasn't that I've gone and put myself forward.
Okay.
It was more about marketing week nominated us. And the brands we were up against was like Cadbury's, Barbie. They were massive brands with budgets. And that's what actually Libby came back into the board to say, is that for Emma to win that award with the budgets that she's got, is actually phenomenal. So
Fantastic.
she really advocated that work and understood it's not easy to get that type of recognition, really.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, but it's not just about the award. It's also about actually introducing that whole concept to like putting what is the elephant in the room, getting people to talk about their kind of money, and then helping them. But almost like as an organization, helping them address some of those issues. Because I think that one of the big themes of this summit here is about personalization, how to do personalization at scale. And it's like the majority of customers want personalized experience. Was it 71% is the number that gets quoted. So what I wanted to ask, and then I wanted to dig into it because you mentioned a couple of different things I wanted to kind of understand a bit more. But what does personalization mean for the TSB?
To me, it's about the right message to the right customer at the right time.
Okay.
It's about your individual and treating you as an individual and making it, so using that data to really highlight exactly what we need to be saying. So from a sales point of view, we've obviously turned loans to personalised. So that's about getting a personalised loan rate to you. But also we started to switch it on for mortgages as well. So we're looking at mortgages that might be with a different bank. Okay. And then we're starting to be able to personalise those communications from a sales point of view.
Perfect. I mean, tell me a little bit about the loans, because that's a really interesting story, because of some of the numbers, particularly via the mobile app. It's just been phenomenal.
300% increase. When we originally launched, it went straight up overnight. So again, the chief finance officer was definitely looking at those numbers, because they just started to, you get the right message to the right customer, and it just worked.
And how does it? Some of the mechanics. How does it actually work? What was it that you were actually kind of doing? Was it you just doing some analysis in the background and thinking about, these are the things that these people might respond to, or is it being that the customers make a request for something and then it triggers?
It can be a little bit two-way. So if they visit the loans page, we're then now tracking and there's stuff like that. But we're also starting to use data. Right. So we're starting to look at what do our personal loans customers look like, and are there other customers that have those similar characteristics, so that we can start to match the data and to then look at the right customer. I guess then you can start to say, like, people like you that have done X, Y, and Z, and then that becomes, there's a behavioral science kind of aspect of it, so that, or social proof aspect of it, like going, I don't feel like I'm alone. There's other people that are like me. But I think what's really interesting about some of the things you were telling is that because it's not just about personalization that is tied to solely commercial outcomes, but it's personalization which has really next best action for the benefit of the customer at its heart. Because you talked about credit card payments and debts and direct debits and stuff. Tell me about that as well. Yeah, this is the bit I'm really passionate about, because this is about looking for vulnerable customers that aren't talking. Yes. And that's the thing, is that I can do the campaign and try and get people to talk, but that's going to take time. But there's still going to be people that aren't talking. So I feel like we've got this two-pronged strategy, really. I've got the awareness of the elephant and trying to get people to talk, but also then you've got the data at the background. And it's trying to use that data, and this is what we're brainstorming and doing lots of workshops on at the moment, is there's so many things we could do with it. Sure. It's almost starting to narrow it down and prioritise. The sort of first ones we've looked at is gambling blocks, just to see what we can do there. And then we've also been looking at people with credit cards that don't have a direct debit set up, which then causes credit scoring issues if they don't pay on time. Payment, right? Okay. So it's about protecting that customer to try and put some of those safeguards around it. I mean, like I mentioned before, it's like that in the background, in particular in UK financial services, the FCA's introduced the new consumer duty. Was it in July of last year, July of 2023? And many people are actually approaching it from a quality assurance perspective, almost like looking at things retrospectively, like, are we in compliance or is there things we need to do? So I'm really heartened the fact that the TSB is obviously going to be doing that anyway, but you're doing something more proactively by using the data and the insight and like a personalized approach to try and protect people from things they might have forgotten about, might not know about, or just to give them control over some of these sort of things, which I think is brilliant. I actually led on the consumer duty in TSB, so I led on the consumer understanding work stream, which again, I think putting a marketeer with that type of mind, I think that's where we started to think about some of the opportunities, exactly as you say, of how do you support customers, what's the prompts along the way, and they're the sort of conversations that we're having at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's. I think it's great. I think it's definitely. It feels like a leading kind of like light, because I know there's a lot of people that are thinking about that and thinking about how big of a task it is, and for some financial institutions, it's enormous because they're just massive, massive institutions. But also, one of the last things I wanted to ask you about was, and this is a message I think that needs to be made again and again and again to anybody who's in that sort of marketing or customer experience or customer service, or anybody that's customer sort of focused and trying to drive those better outcomes. You said in your presentation, to get buy-in for these plans that you have, you need to speak the language of your CFO. And I want you just maybe to expand on that and almost like kind of deliver the message to the audience, because I think it's important. One, because some of these initiatives, they have to be commercially relevant. And so help me understand, what do you mean by talking the language of your CFO? And how do you go about doing that?
So if you look traditionally, marketeers often use PowerPoint. Yeah, we use these creative, we create great images, but you've got to realize that for some people, their style, not just the CFO, it applies to lots of other people, but you do need to think about their style. Mm-hmm. So I'm more likely to send a spreadsheet to the CFO,
right?
Rather than a presentation. And actually, I think we're also comfortable with presentations in marketing.
Yes.
And it's our comfort zone, but actually you need to step outside that. So for me, it's more about spreadsheets. It's about leading with the numbers. It's about, I get great support from Adobe in terms of case studies, mm-hmm. and that really starts to bring stuff to life.
Right, okay.
And they're really good at sort of showing the commerciality or cost savings, because it can be both or either. But I don't know, it sort of feels
It seems to me that also, I mean, tell me if you'd agree with this, it's like marketing and finance don't often meet. And sometimes it's almost, you have to go through a process of getting to know somebody and almost like, but you have to go to where they're at. It's almost like true customers. So if you want to serve your customers, you want to help your customers, you have to go to where they're at. And I wonder, do you think that marketeers or customer experience professionals or leaders, they should just be going and hanging out in finance a bit more?
We have a stakeholder map in my team, and I've got people, I have someone that's responsible for the marketing budget.
Right.
And they are then responsible for the relationship with finance.
Okay.
And they've worked really hard to actually build that relationship. So it's also about all levels.
Right.
It's not just about the CFO.
No, sure.
And the great thing about TSB actually is that it's of that size where I get great exposure to the CFO.
Right.
But what I have done is then built it all the way down in the layers. So each level, there's almost like a connection. Mm-hmm. We have regular meetings. I think it's like fortnightly meetings with them where we've got marketing and finance. So it's just about thinking about finance mm-hmm. as a stakeholder.
Yeah.
And how do you bring them on the journey? So I'm trying to get to the point where it's finance that pitch my ideas to the CFO.
Sure.
That's the magical moment.
Oh, no, completely. Or when the CFO comes in and goes, we should do that.
Yeah.
That's great. But I think you're absolutely right. It's like
I do think the mindset of CFOs is changing though. So yeah. I think they're starting to, I think there's a real realization that mobile channels and internet, they drive huge amounts of revenue, but also it's the cost saving side as well. But they are crucial channels.
And with all of that sort of personalization, what's next? What are the big things? You mentioned you're going into mortgages. Anything here to help kind of like do that? I mean, is that where you had success in one area and you're just going to try and replicate and scale it across?
It's about we're at the embedding stage at the moment.
Right.
So we've just rolled out AEM onto our website. It's been on the mobile where we've had those. So I haven't done any personalization on the web yet.
Right.
We're literally just finished the implementation. So I'm really excited to see what can we do with the web.
Yeah.
And then it's just working out, how do we get to hyper personalization? That's the vision of how do we really get onto that journey.
Yeah, because I think the thing that feels to me that's one of the things that stands out is that the personalization it's across the whole customer life cycle. Mm. And I think you have to almost think about it. It's not just about campaigns or particularly like a push, as it were, and it has to be at a holistic sort of level. So when somebody responds to a campaign, what's the handover like? If somebody has a question about it, or somebody has a kind of problem, or can they self-serve, and are they going to get generated kind of like the right sort of content to meet the right sort of problem based on their whole profile and their the markers that they have and things. So I think it's a fascinating. I'm super excited to see how people can do that, because it's not an easy problem to solve, but it's the benefit is very much there. But finally, I just want to say congratulations on the Pink Elephant Award. That's amazing. Congratulations on the Maverick Award. Congratulations on doing a great presentation up on the main stage. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your insight with me today. And I also want to leave my listeners with your question. Like, what are your 3 words? Because I think that's a great end.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you.
My pleasure. Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.